glad you came. Love that. Love it, love it, love it. I called Louise just before New Year's Day and said, well, what are we going to do next Sunday? And she said, well, can you kind of hang loose? I'm not sure about the music. I said, have you got any sermons you'd like preached? And she started to laugh, and she said, you too? And I said, yes. And it's nice to have somebody that appreciates you. Move towards a big event like Christmas, and you get there, and you go, and then what comes next? Well, that's always a difficult type of thing to do, but I had a couple of experiences this last week, and I think that they're going to fit nicely into the sermon, and you'll understand while I talk about it. If you were to rate me on a scale 1 to 10 in terms of positive attitude, where would you put me? 11. Oh, thank you. Is Jim Lyons positive in his attitude, his actions, his outreach? Does he really show a good driving forward, or does he have on the other side? It's a question I often ask myself, and it's easy to fall into a pattern of negative stink think because you become critical. Critical. It's a good thing. We talk about self-evaluation and taking a hard look at ourselves over and over again, and we get to the point where we're so critical about what's going on, we never, never, never see anything good in anything. Stink think begins to move through our whole systems in a unique way. And so, Jim Lyons and family sitting down, ready to watch Annie, a Tony Award-winning play with marvelous music, started off and says, oh my God, what am I doing here at $10 a seat? The kids don't sing on tune. The music is written so that kids can't sing on tune, and if they don't, it doesn't make any difference. And for about 5 minutes into the play, I said, okay, turn off and go to sleep. And then I said to myself, you are an absolute fool. What kind of standard are you bringing? If you knew what Annie should be, why didn't you write it yourself? Let the play speak to you. And I switched. I got rid of the stink think. I looked at the little gal playing Annie and said, she's a cute little thing. I began to listen to the music, and I began to move with the rhythm of the play. And tears came down in the eyes on occasion, and smiles and laughter, and I appreciated more and more and more, and I was one of the most enthusiastic. And there, watching my son and my other son, both of them applauding madly, a 17-year-old kid applauding, saying he's never had an experience like that. And I thought to myself, why do we get so critical that we don't let the flow and the force of life continually move us? And then Friday night we went to Meadowbrook. Don Juan and Hell. It's not the kind of a play a lot of people like. Some did leave. 4 people seated on a stage. Don Juan, one of the young ladies he attempted. Her father, who he killed in a duel after he attempted. And suave, smooth Satan. George Bernard Shaw. And I listened and I sat there, and our tickets are in the front row, and I forgot everybody. And I was looking at a mirror of Jim Lyons, the good, the bad, the possible, the evil, the ups, the downs, as in that kind of special way that only Shaw can do. He stripped away all of the niceties of life and talked in a special way to everybody sitting there about questions of heaven and hell and good and evil and male and female relations. And I said to myself, Louise, I got a series. Beginning in February, with your help, we are going to do, for at least 4 weeks, George Bernard Shaw as a kickoff. And if there's anybody sitting here today that would like to do some dramatic reading and acting, I have parts each week for 2 to 3 people. And I want to take some of the script of Don Juan in Hell. And I want to have some people who are willing to put some time in and work with me a little bit to do a dramatic reading, to begin to provide an understanding of where Shaw comes from, and then we'll talk about it in the sermon as to whether or not it fits within our concepts of God's love in our lives. And I'm volunteering Nancy Souter to be one of the people, because I got a script for her where she can literally drip. She's one of our greatest actresses. I love it. Anybody that wants to join, see me afterwards. Because Shaw in that play has a fascinating series of things. And I just want to read one short part to give you a taste of it. Don Juan is in hell, and he's talking with the devil, and the girl's father, who is in heaven, comes down, and they're talking about all kinds of things. And Don Juan, who has suffered mightily on earth because he has continually sought after pleasure, is in hell beginning to recognize that all things which lead only to pleasure are ultimately self-destructive. And the challenge that Don Juan sets out to people, and the challenge of George Bernard Shaw at this point, is that in the dialogue of hell, all kinds of beautiful, wonderful, marvelous words are mouthed. They talk a lot about love. They talk a lot about giving. They talk a lot about reaching out. They talk a lot about happiness. They talk a lot about joy. And when Don Juan wants to leave this and go to heaven, for you realize, says George Bernard Shaw, that the difference between hell and heaven is a twist of the mind, an approach. The difference between loving and hating Annie was a switch in the mind, an approach. The difference between the negative and the think and the positive and the outreach is a switch in the mind and the approach. The devil and Don Juan are in the midst of a discussion. The devil has just made a lengthy speech about people on earth and what's going on. And Don Juan answers him, and he says to him, it is the fact that they are doing your will, or rather drifting with your want of will, instead of doing their own, that makes them the uncomfortable, false, restless, artificial, petulant, wretched creatures they are. The devil says back to him, Senor Don Juan, you are uncivil to my friends. Now listen to this. This is Shaw at his best, whether Jim Lyons gets it out or not. Pah! Why should I be civil to them or to you? In this palace of lies, a truth or two will not hurt you. Your friends are the dullest dogs I know. They're not beautiful. They're only decorated. They're not clean. They're only shaved and starched. They're not dignified. They're only fashionably dressed. They're not educated. They're only college passmen. They're not religious. They're only pew renters. They're not moral. They're only conventional. They're not virtuous. They're only cowardly. They're not even vicious. They're only frail. They're not artistic. They're only lascivious. They're not prosperous. They're only rich. They're not loyal. They're only civil. Not dutiful. Only sheepish. Not public-spirited. Only patriotic. Not courageous. Only quarrelsome. Not determined. Only obstinate. Not masterful. Only domineering. Not self-controlled. Only obtuse. Not self-respecting, only vain. Not kind, only sentimental. Not social, only gregarious. Not considerate, only polite. Not intelligent, only opinionated. Not progressive, only factious. Not imaginative, only superstitious. Not just, only vindictive. Not generous, only propitiatory. Not disciplined, only cowed. And not truthful at all. Liars, every one of them, to the backbones of their souls. To which the girl's father says, your flow of words is simply amazing. Did you listen to that long litany? Did you find, if you listened, that it stripped away some of the things, not dignified, only fashionably dressed? And the society which constantly puts an emphasis on what's out here instead of what's in there? Are you more concerned about the name across the back of your jeans than you are about the values of your own life? Not educated, I passed in college. Not clean of mind and body and spirit, but shaved and starched. Not moral, only conventional. Not prosperous, only rich. Not public-spirited, only patriotic. Are you listening to a 1981 play? The power of Don Juan in Hell and the power of the writings of George Bernard Shaw is that he spoke to all people of all times. And it seems to me, as we try to reflect on some of the things that he talked about, where he talked about the human relations and all of the things that go on, would provide not only an excellent sermon series, but some fun for people who would like to get into the reading and do some dramatic debate and argumentation as part of our pulpit drama. Because Shaw did speak to the nature of man. How would you define character? As I listened to Shaw and as I listened to the debate going on, and as I said, I wish I could go back 3 or 4 times because it's so well done and it speaks so much, I was trying to understand, what is a character? How would you define it? Anybody? No hook questions this time. Usually there is, but not this time. A character is what? The distinctive qualities of an individual. There are individuals that you always tell stories about. They're called characters. The reason they're called characters is that there's something about them that continually steps out, and you are aware of it, and you talk about it. Am I right? Think back in your own life. There are teachers, there are friends, there are relatives, there are individuals. Some of them you don't even like. But you say, boy, he's a character. She's really a character. They're individuals that are so individual that you immediately think about them. Bill Smelt, we'll have the memorial service next week, was a character. Even when he was wrong, he was a character. Even when he was absolutely angry, he was a character. Even when he stormed out of this church threatening never to come back and he's yelling his head off at me, he was a character. For he stormed with the uniqueness and he got angry with the uniqueness and he told me that he would never step foot in this church again. And he never did. Now you want to know why, don't you? Sure, I'll tell you, because there's another side to the story. A few Christmases ago, when Mr. Nixon was still president, and there was that hideous bombardment in the face of all of the peace movement and so on of Hanoi and the northern part of Vietnam, I said from this pulpit that I felt betrayed. Several people got angry at me at that point, but that's all right. I felt betrayed then, and I feel betrayed now in the same way. And he stormed out. When Mr. Nixon ultimately fell from grace, he stormed at me that I wasn't strong enough to stand up and tell it like it really was. You were too kind to Mr. Nixon, he said. I said, I don't feel any differently than I did that. But you see, he was somebody on the far supportive side, and when he fell a long way. And he got angry at me for not. But on both occasions, this man, who you could tell story after story after story about, lived life in an honest, open way, even when I thought he was wrong. But the distinctive qualities of a person are what make a character. And when you speak of a good character, you're talking about somebody that exhibits in their life those qualities that we hold to be of real, long-lasting value. I want to pause there for a moment. Real, long-lasting value. I have no great love for superstars. They may be marvelous people, but what people see isn't important because it's of a passing value. I have no great love of some individuals who can flash out and do something once in a while that's absolutely brilliant. I appreciate their brilliance, but that's not what it's all about. Character is that ongoing, striving, continuing, habit-forming lifestyle that is an adventure, but at the same time a statement of God's righteousness in life. That's habit. Aristotle caught it, and I put it in the bulletin. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. The worst person in the world does good things on occasion. The best person in the world does evil things on occasion. We have a tendency to look at the worst person and hold on to the few good things they do, and a tendency to look at the good person and hold on to that occasional evil. That's part of our nature. But the real value of life is not what you hold to be true, but how you live and act it out. For character is habit, and habit is doing. Emil Brunner, the famous theologian, talked about habit in a unique way. And he said it very nicely, what I'm trying to say, that there are two kinds of acts in all of life, the distinctive act and the habitual act. The distinctive act might be good, it might be bad, it may be something that just, for whatever reason, once in a lifetime the opportunity comes and you do. The man who climbed outside, from balcony to balcony to balcony to balcony, up to where the woman was in Los Angeles, and then helped her down, and the fire that was through her apartment and would have threatened her life and probably cost her life, helped her down one balcony into another apartment and got her out safe. Is not a habitual hero, but a distinctive act took place. Although as I listened to him, the man would probably do the same thing over and over again. Because habitually within him was not only the concern for human life, but he said, when you see something in life that needs to be done, do it. Which is a habitual characteristic. When you see something that needs to be done, do it. That man never sat back and said, well, I wonder if I could climb up there. Well, I don't know whether I can do this or not. Maybe somebody else. I'm sure the fire. He saw what had to be done, and his commitment, his character, his habitual acts and approach had prepared him that when the distinctive time came, he did. But what is virtue? What is virtue? Virtue is that internal power that leads one to habitually perform good deeds. I always tape the sermons tight, so they all fit together. Don't like three things like this. There are always three. Good introduction, good conclusion. There are always three things, and I always tape them tight. Character is the distinctive quality that an individual has, and that distinctive quality is acted out by habitual actions, and a virtuous person is one whose inner resources drive them to habitually do good and to be a healthy character. Now, when you look at the virtues of life, the Greeks had an interesting idea. They thought individuals ought to be prudent, balanced, wholesome. Aristotle's golden mean, not going to one extreme or to the other, but constantly moving within that narrow division that you took the best and the worst and you constantly balanced your life and moved straight forward. One should be prudent and discreet and understanding and open according to their virtues, which became, by the way, part of the Christian virtues, particularly within the Roman Catholic theology of Augustine and others. What happened to my notes? They just went flying again. Thank you. Temperance. Very parallel. Fortitude. We call it commitment today. Fortitude. The ability to stand strong and to maintain your character and your virtue and your understanding and your faith and your habits and your deeds in spite of the fact that there are forces out there, both consciously and unconsciously, doing their best to kick you in the teeth. Commitment that even when things are going wrong, you make a strong statement. The church, which is the one place that over the years has called for commitment, is also the one place where people drop out most easily. It is so easy to drop out of church that I'm amazed more people don't do it. Over the years, as I've been in the ministry, 20 years now, 10 years here, I have heard more reasons for people leaving Pine Hill and other churches than you can shake a stick at. Not a one of them that has ever been honest. Don't like the choir, don't like the minister, don't like the organist, don't like the Sunday school, don't like the women's fellowship, don't like this, don't like that, don't like this, don't like that, don't like... Whoever said that belonging and attending and supporting the church was something that you liked? God help us. That's part of the entertainment thing. I come to church, entertain me, make me feel good, I'll go out, and that's nice. And what's your commercial? Oh yes, business meetings, da-da-da-da. Huh? You know and I know that there are 1,000 things in any church, the best church, that are wrong. But there are thousands of things that are right. You know and I know that in any relationship there are things which are wrong or can go wrong, but there are things which are right. And the power and the fortitude to stand and say, I don't like Jim Lyons, but by God I serve God by best working in this church and supporting people, is a fortitude that is difficult but necessary. Justice was the fourth of the virtues. Justice, the ability to receive and to mete out and to do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and to handle the disappointment when they don't do unto you as you have done unto them. Justice, the ability to say that while I may like you, and while I may love you, and while I may want to do something for you and do everything I can for you, justice says that there is a standard that I will bring even in that loving relationship. This is prophetic. This is biblical. This is the key. Let justice roll up like mighty waters, and righteousness. And when you take these things and mold them together in your character, and you begin to accentuate the positive, and you begin to hold on to, and you begin to reach out, and you begin to love, and your core value system swells with the growing, pulsing concept that there is a way to live, and that the way to live is a better way to live. And that, as you've seen with Don Juan, and as you've seen and will see over the course of February, as we try to understand what Don Juan was going through, that some of the momentary pleasures are the most destructive in life, for they destroy not only the individual, but relationships. The ability to rationalize and justify. Only one line in the play I would have added. But for me, that's not bad. Usually I'm more arrogant than that. One line I would have added. Don Juan says that there is nothing that man wants to do that he won't find a way to do it, to which I wanted to shout out, and a means to justify it. Pathological liars. We make it sound, this is where the power of Don Juan, we make it sound like it's love, we make it sound like it's beautiful, we make it sound like it's holy, we make it sound like it's special, and all the time we know it's rotten and dirty to the core, but we make it sound that way. We play games with ourselves. We all love hell because hell is a lie. And we live in it because we don't want to take the virtues and the fortitude and the justice and the outreach. And this ties it all up. We begin to see, under God, a new reality. And through God's grace, we find the will to do it. We see the reality, the real, the powerful. We strip away, as Shaw makes us do, as you will see, all of the fancy clothes, all of the fancy accents, all of the fancy things, and we look at the individual as that individual is under God, capable of loving. and we do things differently. And we have a commitment to life. I'm going to eliminate the last hymn because I want to tell you one story because it's important to me, and I think you'll appreciate it too. Carol, one to you. Last night, my Chris spent a few hours at the hospice. They were short of help originally. They had one person there, and they called in a panic, and she said, yes, I'll go, and I'll volunteer some time. And she got her uni on, and she got her stuff on, and headed out into the dark, and I did some reading. She came home. I said, what did you do today? She said, I helped somebody die. I said, what does that mean to you? And she went through this individual, what he had been through, and how she spent some time with, and up until the very end was holding his hand, and she had taken some oil, and even in the last 5 minutes of life had rubbed some oil into his feet, and into his back, and into his hands. And it held him there and talked to him and talked about things until suddenly it was apparent to her and the nurses that were there that this man had passed on. And I was curious. I knew the answer, but I was curious. I wanted to probe, and she was talking about the experience. And I said to her, didn't you want to leave? Didn't you want to just go out and spend some time down the hall somewhere? You had other things to do. You could have justified there were people that needed all these kinds of things. Why did you stay there? And you know what her answer was? My commitment to life. I will not abandon life to death. And I would have done that to leave. That's what I'm talking about. That's what this whole sermon's about. That's what we are at. It is a commitment to life. It is a commitment to growth. It is a commitment to helping. It is a commitment to holding. It is a commitment to reaching out. It is a commitment to be hand in hand. It is a commitment to the force of life which comes from God. And I don't know what the sermons are going to be between now and the time we get Shaw together. But I hope that you will be here for each of the Shaw sermons where we will reflect on his concepts. And Don Juan in hell says the force of life will continue to function.